Hi, I'm Hitomi, and welcome to YouTube Live. And today, as we've scheduled it at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, here we are. I have my visitor here, Françoise Weeks from Portland. We've been visiting for the last day and a half or so and just chatting up a storm about our lives and our love of flowers and everything. So here's an opportunity for us and all of you to get involved in asking lots of questions to Francoise so we can find out a little bit more about her. So, Francoise, how has it been so far in our visit here
It's been
on
fabulous. It's so beautiful here, and you just live in this wonderful spot, and it's just been so enjoyable to visit and to share a lot of information.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And to get this started, I have a few questions that I sort of jotted down to get things going and get you guys rolling, asking some questions. So I'm going to start out with this one. How many years have you been in the floral profession?
I started in '96, so 21 years.
Wow, so you've been in it
Yeah.
for a while. And what was your career path before that?
Well, I went to school in Belgium and got a degree in teaching. I taught middle school, and then when I moved to the United States, a couple of years after I got here, I started to work in a medical lab. We did chromosome studies, and I did that for about 20 years. And
Wow.
before I started my business.
So you're really rooted in science. Now, has science sort of applied to what you do with flowers?
Not really.
Not really. So is this like sort of your search for the creative side?
The creative side, that is. That's it, yes.
So were you always interested in flowers?
I always was interested in flowers. I grew up in Belgium where flowers are just a big part of everyday life. And always have played with flowers. My mom always had flowers at home, and so they just are pretty special.
Oh, excellent. So the creative side, the making of, like you mentioned, like we were just chatting up and you were saying that you were also interested in weaving and you were actually self-taught weaving as well.
Yes, I did that for quite a while and really enjoyed it. And then when I started to really get involved with the flowers, I kind of let that go by the sideway because I just didn't have the time for it anymore. But I still have my loom, so
Yeah.
someday.
Do you think we'll ever see a little bit of weaving coming into your flowers?
Maybe some weaving or maybe some yarn.
Yeah,
I
maybe
don't know.
so, maybe so. So what was really the career change? Like how did you do it and why?
So I always had wanted to work with flower, or I had wanted to work with flowers for a long time, and I came from a country where flowers were really a big deal. There were flowers everywhere. Flower shops had an incredible selection. And then when I moved here 41 years ago, it was a very different scene.
Yeah.
And so I kind of put that dream on the back burner. And then in '96, I decided to give it a try.
That's awesome. So did you work in any flower shops or anything like that to gain any kind of experiences about, with the shops?
Yeah, when I was in Belgium, the last 3 months before I moved here, I worked in a flower shop every Saturday. We worked long hours from 2 a.m. until 8 p.m. I learned a lot, and some of those things I still apply. And then in the early 80s, I worked for a few months, less than a year, in a couple of flower shops. And yeah.
So did you ever have the desire to open a flower shop?
No.
And why?
I just really, I knew that I wasn't very good at managing people, and I wasn't really all that interested in having an actual shop. I wanted to work out of my home and do more designing and instead of having a shop.
So I've noticed that quite a few years that I've been following you that you're known for the woodland look.
Uh-huh.
And so how did that get started?
So there's a little story behind it. It was exactly 10 years ago that out of nowhere, a childhood memory popped in my head. And so when my parents were avid nature lovers, and between the time I was 6 until I was 10, we used to spend a month in Switzerland every summer, and we would go hike every day. And oftentimes after lunch, my siblings and I would go and look around and gather a piece of bark and gather some moss and pick some wildflowers and make an arrangement on the piece of bark and give it to my mom. And that's the memory that popped really out of nowhere 45 years later.
Isn't that fabulous?
And so I was working on a big project at the time with a photographer and an art director. And I told Kiana about it, and she said, "You really need to run with this idea." And I said, "Why?" Who cares? And she said, "You really should." And so I went ahead. I went to the flower market. I couldn't find a piece of bark. I found a log. And I ended up, for the photo shoot, decorating the piece of the log with a lot of textures and mosses, etc. And Joni, the photographer, really liked it. She took lots of pictures. I put in my portfolio, but quite frankly, still didn't think much about it. And then a couple of months later, this bride came for a consultation, and she told me that she was getting married on Mount Hood at Timberline Lodge, and that the name of her fiance was Woods. And so she asked me if I could interpret that woodland arrangement that I had made and make centerpieces, and also if I could make a couple of log arrangements for the buffet table.
Wow.
So that's kind of how it got started. And
It's kind of really from power of suggestion, isn't it?
yes, it was.
That's fantastic.
Yes, it was.
So you were able to almost immediately implement the idea that sort of born quickly like this, and that there was a client that was ready to just embrace
Right.
it.
Right.
Isn't that fantastic?
And I really, really enjoyed it. And doing woodlands kind of gave me new eyes, because I started to see things in nature that I really never had paid attention to.
But you basically picked up where you left off as a child,
As a
when you
child,
used to
yeah.
collect and do these things, and you used to hike a lot with your
Yes.
family.
Yeah.
So you just sort of picked it up again.
Yes. And so I kind of became a little obsessed with the whole thing, and started to wonder how I could use pieces of wood as containers, and learn to figure out how to the mechanics behind how to implement the idea. And so for the woodlands, I typically use very few flowers, mostly textures. And what I define as textures is anything but flowers. So it's seed pods, mosses, branches, buds, etc., etc.
So it's really textures of nature.
Textures of nature.
That's wonderful. So you're actually studying when you're out there hiking, kind of looking at what happens in nature, different combinations of how things fall on top of each other, and thinking like, wow, that's a cool possibilities.
I think it almost happens subconsciously.
Yeah.
But I just really do pay a lot more attention to what's on the forest floor than I used to.
So do you actually catalog different things you see, and then sort of seek the nomenclature, so that you get to know what the product that you're using, all of those things? It's kind of a European obsession, don't you think? The nomenclature.
Well, maybe, so I actually haven't gone foraging all that much to use those elements in my work, because we happen to have a couple of vendors at the flower market in Portland
Oh,
who
how
sell all that
fabulous.
stuff.
Isn't that
And
fabulous?
so I typically buy everything and then incorporate it into the designs.
So it really is truly a very viable look that has customers that likes it, the brides who love it.
Yeah.
I mean, we have seen lots of outdoor things and out in the woods, like setups, arches right out there in the forest and all of that. So it really applies beautifully. Have you done lots of these kind of weddings?
I actually did. By the time, about 4 years ago, about 25% of the weddings that I did were woodland weddings. And I also got quite a few requests for event, to do the woodland look for events and even for memorial services or funerals.
That makes a lot of sense,
Yeah.
actually. Memorial services. I mean, people who love hiking, who love
Right.
nature, what a perfect tribute for them, for
Yeah.
sure. So, what about your botanical couture? Where did that come from?
So that came in 4 different stages.
Okay, okay.
I kind of started with purses about, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago. I saw a beautiful picture in a design book by a French designer, and it was a picture of a beautifully set table in a Parisian dining room, and on each place setting there was a hostess gift, and the hostess gift was a botanical purse.
How cool.
And it really caught my attention, and so I figured out how to make them so that they were really light, and I ended up making a lot of them for little flower girls, and
Very
also
nice.
for bistro tables.
Uh-huh.
That was the first one. And then the next one were the shoes. I just saw these beautiful postcards with, they were virtually designed shoes by this, is actually a French photographer, Michel Treshkov.
Oh,
who-
Fleur Shoes.
Yes.
That
and
is
he-
a wonderful
yeah.
book.
He did the book Chou-Fleur
Yeah,
with and it totally caught my fancy. And even though I never had worn high heel shoes, I went ahead, and after not being able to figure out how to, or finding somebody who would make frames for the shoes, I ended up going to Goodwill and buy high heel shoes and figuring out and just decorating them with botanical materials.
That is very cool.
Then the headpieces, it was a photographer in Portland, Ted Mishima, who contacted me about 6 years ago asking if I would collaborate with him, and asked me to do a botanical headpiece. And we've done lots of photo shoots since then.
That's fantastic.
And then the jewelry started about 4 years ago when somebody asked me in class, showed me a picture of a botanical ring and asked me if I had made it. And I said, no. And she said, well, can you show us how to do it? And I said, well, let me think about it for a second. And I figured it out. And then I got curious about making necklaces, how to do the necklaces and the earrings, etc.
So all these beautiful wearable
Yeah.
botanical couture.
Yes, it's just a lot of fun.
So where do you see that going?
Well, I think that it would be fabulous for events or for weddings, to not always do corsages, but maybe replace corsages by whether it's earrings or rings or a bracelet or something like that. I think that would be really fun. I've actually, a couple of years ago, was contacted by an event coordinator in New York and asked to do large headpieces for a birthday party there. It just so turned out that I was teaching a workshop in New York at the time, and they had noticed on my schedule that I was going to be there. And so Joe Jarvis and I went to New York together, and we made these very large botanical headpieces that were worn by models at this big birthday party.
Isn't that fantastic?
Yeah, it was
So there's like a lot of possibilities, aren't there?
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, in event work, I
Yeah.
mean, there's just lots of opportunities.
Absolutely.
So where are people finding you when they contact you? Like, what prompts them, do you think, to give you a shout?
I am very active on social media, and I
Okay.
think that that's where a lot of people a lot of people have contacted me because they have seen images on.
Yeah, because you post pretty regularly. So
Yes, I do.
where, what are some of the places that we can find you?
Facebook
Uh-huh.
and Instagram, and then I have a website, and it's easy. All of them are under Françoise Weeks.
Okay, so what kind of posts do you normally like as a social media kind of activist? I think that's what you are.
Yeah.
So what kind of pictures do you like to post the most?
I like to post images of the work of students when I teach workshops to show the beautiful work that they do and the diverse designs that they come up with during the workshop. I post images of my work, and I also love to post images of beautiful flowers.
Yeah, I've noticed that you post a lot of beautiful flowers, like different varieties, exotic varieties, close-ups, and that. So you're obviously drawn to the details of.
Yes, I love detail.
Yes, but that's basically how you capture some of the beauty of some parts that you might actually then possibly even dismember to use to create your sort of a montage of petals and flowers, right?
Yes, I think jewelry is a real good example for that because I like to use interesting textures. Actually, proteas are a really good example.
Oh,
how the king proteas, you can take them apart and create use those petals, whether it's for a necklace or a bracelet or even a ring or earrings. So taking flowers apart really opens up a whole new arena of materials that you can
So
use.
do you recommend like certain flowers that are good for that will hold up better than others? Like do you do a lot of experiments, testing?
I do. Absolutely.
So will you ever be writing a book on what's recommended, what's good for this, and how long, and all that kind of things that helps people decide what kind of materials they can use?
Well,
It's just a mere suggestion, Françoise. But you know what? That's a very interesting topic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that sort of close up at flowers and details and that sort of thing. So you are a person that really, really loves seeing all of these details and seeing flowers in different ways. Like you like to use flowers, not just the flower themselves, but different parts, the petals, the sepals, whatever. So when did you get started kind of really fine-tuning and really kind of zeroing in on the beauties of these things?
I think I started to do more detailed work when I started the woodlands. And I really do like to use all the elements of stems. Larkspur is a really good example. You can use the individual blossoms for corsars and boutonnieres or flower crowns or jewelry or whatever. And then there's no need to throw away the stem because you can use the buds in the same
buds
manner.
Are beautiful.
And the greens of the larkspur, it's really feathery and really pretty, so you can use that in centerpieces. So that's just an example. Another thing that I like to do is, dahlias are a really good example. So we all know that they don't hold up all that well and that they wilt fairly easily. So instead of throwing the wilted flower away, you can actually pull all the flower petals off, and what remains there is beautiful texture.
No, that's true.
Same with carnations. You can just take off the blossom and then the calyx of it.
That is beautiful.
Just a wonderful
In fact,
element.
sometimes you can, when you use it that way, sometimes it's almost hard to, you think it's some kind of a new breed of something.
Different.
Yeah.
People wonder, what element that is.
I think that's really cool. So I notice when you share your students' work, I notice there's diversity in their work. So you don't do the traditional thing where you give them all the same flowers and see what they create or to copy your work, not at all. So that is not part of your teaching style.
No.
So how do you do it?
I never do it that way. So typically I make a couple of pieces the day before, so finished pieces, so that the students can see a finished product, and then I show the mechanics on how to do it. Whether it is how to use a succulent that doesn't have how to create a stem for a succulent in a centerpiece, or lots of different things. So I show all the different mechanics, and then the students and show different examples of centerpieces or whatever topic we're talking about. And then the students just choose from a really nice variety of flowers and textures that I have. and they create their own. So they basically implement the mechanics that they just learned, and they just follow their imagination and what comes from their heart.
So you really kind of set them loose to be creative.
Totally. Yeah.
That's wonderful, and because I really do see such a diverse range, and you give them credit. You know, you put down the names of people and what they created. I think it's sort of a wonderful way to end off their wonderful day of workshop, isn't it? So, what other things do you do to encourage their creativity? Is there anything, any other kind of tips
Well,
that you give them?
I really always mention to look at nature and to look through different eyes and see what's out there, and to use elements that are not typically used. So one of the things that I learned when I was working in a flower shop in Belgium, those people used a lot of houseplants. So I always have quite a selection of houseplants available. And
I noticed that at your workshop. You got flats and flats of 4-inch plants.
Yeah.
I think that's fabulous.
Yeah, and how to use the foliage, you know, or calancho, use the flowers, the cyclamen use the flowers and the foliage, and so when you use foliage of houseplants, it just really opens a whole new selection of textures that you can
Actually,
use.
that's really, really true.
Yeah.
And they get to see as they cut it up different parts.
Right.
The buds, all of those things. I mean, sometimes you might even look at something that's almost done and see the curl of a dry leaf or whatever, right? I mean, it just prompts them to look, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
You are great for that. That's just a wonderful way of teaching.
That's fun.
Because I have run into several people, many people, over the years that said, "Oh, I've taken a class with Françoise. She makes me see things differently." And I'm like, "Well, that's wonderful." I think that's a huge gift, huge gift, because it's another look at the world.
Yeah.
And now you have more to enjoy.
Yeah, and it's a way also to look at your garden. You know, instead of only using the flowers from the garden, you can use the ground cover, you can use the foliage from annuals and perennials, or blooming branches or whatever. So it really opens a whole new spectrum of materials you can use from your own garden.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. It's such an awareness. I hope there's people out there that have some questions. We're looking for some questions from the audience. I have plenty of questions, but I just want to make sure that we get some in if we can. So anyway, what I see is, just that, that you're giving them diversity for more creative process by seeing the ability of the use of so many things that they never thought about. So how much more does that give a designer? Like, really, is it a finite? Is it this or is it that?
Well, I think that once that you start looking at plants that way, you start looking at all the plants that way, and that's something that many students have mentioned.
Yeah. No, that's great.
And then plus using parts, when you use parts of plants or stems or whatever, often it looks a little mysterious because it's just not what people are used to see, and it just makes
it's
it
kind
look
of a
little bit
curiosity thing
different.
too, right? It's like, what is that?
Right.
That is cool. I never looked at it that way. I think that's just fantastic.
Another thing that I like to do is to use inexpensive containers and decorate them. That's something that I really learned from looking at the books from Paula Pryke, this designer in England. And decorate inexpensive containers, whether they're yogurt containers or inexpensive plastic containers that you buy, and decorate them with botanical material. It can be beautiful foliages, or it can be asparagus, or any kind of variety of vegetables, or rose petals, or any of those things. And so it just again opens up a new look for the container. They're inexpensive, and if you do weddings and events, the big plus of that is that you don't have to go back to the venue.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah. I think that's one thing I have also noticed is that you pretty much create your design grounds up. That it's not kind of like geared to a certain container or that you have to have this to make this, that you really in fact create almost everything, so that, like you say, right from the container, and that the fact that then you apply what you can use to glue to the container versus what you can design into the container,
Right.
all of those things.
Yeah.
So you could write a book on this, of what does well used for this way, what does, I mean, it's, you can do a whole matrix of the uses of all different parts, and you know, you can really do this because I'm sure you've tried almost everything.
Well, not everything. I've tried a lot of things, I'll put it that way.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. You know, one of the exciting conversations we've had just sharing these, you know, a couple of days together is the excitement of possibly sort of, well, we sort of share some same thoughts on the importance of flour in our lives. We've talked about that, right?
Yes, right.
How important, like, wouldn't it be nice if it was a required, necessary ritual for people to have flowers? What a wonderful world that would be.
Yeah.
We talked about this, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
you talked about really actually in Europe that it's so much more of part of a lifestyle
Yes.
than it is in North America. So how so?
We always had flowers at home. So, for instance, also when you go, at least it was that way when I lived there, when you were invited for dinner or for lunch anywhere, you never brought food or wine. You always brought flowers, or even better, had flowers delivered so that the hostess didn't have to be busy arranging the flowers when the guests arrived. And I think that flowers are just a way of life over there, way more than here.
Yeah.
I think here people focus on flowers for big events, and at least most people do.
And special occasions.
And special occasions, versus finding it important to have a simple arrangement, or even maybe just one flower. I think they feed our souls. So I think they're just super important.
Well,
for me.
and then we talked about, you know, really actually here in North America, you know, that people prioritize certain commodities, and food seems to be so important.
Yeah.
I mean, people spend so much money on food.
Yeah.
And that flowers is not really part of the equation. It's
Right.
like a bit of an afterthought, or if there's an occasion for it.
Right. Right.
We'd like to see it being
Yes.
the other way
it
around,
needs to
right?
change.
And we sort of actually came up with, like, flowers are wonderful because they're not fattening. Right? Didn't we think that was
Yes.
kind of a good little pitch
Yes.
for flowers?
Yes, absolutely.
You know, the interesting thing about flowers is because we all so love it, and we all are in the business of it, and we wish that there were more desire, more need, more necessity of flowers, but we need to do something about it. We need
Yes.
to kind of spread the word. We need to kind of get this lifestyle thing going on,
Yes.
that how important it is. We need to get children outside hiking like you did as a child, and let them explore the excitement of discovering things in nature. You know, they need a little break away
Yeah.
from their little
Devices.
iPhones or
Yeah.
their little, you
Yeah.
know, and that's something we definitely
Yeah.
share. We've talked about that.
I actually got an email from a friend the other day, and she asked me if I could come over to her house this summer to do a class for her daughter and her little friends. And her daughter, I think, is 6 years old, so that will be fun to do something.
Open their
with-
eyes.
Yes.
And
yes.
you know, that's one thing that was really, we also discussed some of the fun things that we've done over the past years, just sharing kind of notes, and I sort of mentioned to Françoise about when we did the pop-up store in downtown Vancouver, and we had opportunity to, like, after school, some of the parents would bring their children down to the store, and we would sort of work with children. We'd show them how to make
Yeah.
like a floral jewelry,
Yeah.
and those kids,
Yeah.
they just absolutely adored it.
Yeah.
And one other girl, her name was Iman. I just remember her so vividly.
Yeah.
She came every day after school with her
Oh,
mom.
wow.
And she was
Yeah.
so sad when the store actually closed up, because this is what she really loved. And she said to us, I mean, that was such a statement. She said to us, now I finally found the career that I want to pursue.
How old
And
was
I
she?
thought she was 8.
Oh my gosh.
And how
Yeah.
cool was that? That's how precious that experience was
Yeah.
with flowers.
Yeah.
And those little girls were just making these jewelry, wearing this and wearing
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
That was the beginning.
Yeah.
And you know that that's a very lasting
Yeah.
something for them,
Yeah.
for their
Yeah,
lifetime.
absolutely. Yeah.
So, what would you teach these kids? You'll take them for a walk. You'll help them make stuff. Like, what are you thinking?
I haven't really thought much about it, but my friend lives on. She has she lives near the woods, so we're probably going to do something woodlandy.
Yeah,
and probably
yeah.
gonna pick up some branches or in the woods and scrape some moss and probably
Love
pick
it.
a few flowers in her mom's garden
Well,
and
the
just show
passion
them
starts there, doesn't it?
how to do it. Yeah, that would be really fun.
So, Francoise, you're going to be making some videos, maybe?
Yes.
Instructional videos?
Yes, I have been asked to do this for quite a long time, and I think that I'm finally ready to do something about it.
That's really cool
And,
because,
yeah,
because I know that people really enjoy seeing the pictures and just even getting a little hint of how to do it. That's
Yeah.
going to be really wonderful. I
Yes.
think you'll be providing a wonderful service to all those fans out there. And in addition to that, all the people who love that are just coming into this.
yes.
So
Yeah.
are you finding that there's a lot of really passionate young people out there?
Yes, there are a lot of them.
Yeah, isn't it great?
Yes,
Because I've
absolutely.
seen them too. And they're just so fresh with their
Yeah.
passion.
Yes.
Like they're not attached to married to the professional floristry as we knew it before. They
Yeah.
want to do it like
Yeah.
in this incredibly passionate way. They love it so much. They
Yeah.
just want to do everything about it.
Yes, and I think it's really wonderful also that in the last few years there have been so many, mostly young women who started these small flower farms on. Can be as small as a third of an acre or something like that, and they grow the most incredible selections of flowers, and that's just been
So these are
really
like
wonderful.
farmer designers.
Yes, yes.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
So you were telling me about some great growers in the Portland area
Yeah.
that brings to the market some really
Yeah.
fabulous selection of flowers.
Yes.
So who are they?
So there's Charles Little. They're down in Eugene, and they have a wonderful selection of flowers. There's Peter Court roses. They're in Hillsborough.
I need to go visit that.
Yeah,
That.
that's
yeah.
a great one to visit. They
Yes.
have all these greenhouses. They mostly grow roses. They used to mostly grow roses and orchids, and then the last few years they've added on freesias and anemones and ranunculus and coxcomb and just beautiful selection. Stockman Acres is another local grower. There's actually quite a few, and then since last year, several of those smaller growers have started to come to the Portland flower market also during the growing season.
That's fantastic. So do you find that the Portland flower market, just the selection's getting better and better?
It is getting better and better, and it's actually a fabulous flower market. I've traveled quite a bit in the last 4 years and gone to quite a few flower markets in the country, and I think that the Portland flower market is definitely in the top 5.
You know, when I lectured one time for the specialty cut flower group, their convention, and there were quite a few growers coming up from Oregon
Yeah,
for that particular convention that was in Vancouver.
yeah,
And I remember that there was quite a large pocket of growers from Oregon who were organics.
right. Organic growers are, I think it's mostly in the food industry. There are a lot of organic growers. I'm not quite sure as far as the flowers, how many organic flower growers there are. There are some.
Because
but
I just
don't know how
remember,
many.
because I wondered about, I mean, we love organics, but I wondered about what the market for organic flowers
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
And they said that they were supplying like the Whole Foods, so that they can maintain that label of organic
I
all the
see.
way through. And I thought that was
see.
interesting.
Yeah.
Because that is a big market today.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So, what are some advice for new designers?
That's actually a question that we have. So.
Oh, okay. So what do we have?
We have username The Floral Den saying, I'm a floral design student at Mizzou and I'm wanting to jump in the industry ASAP. What advice do you have for someone who's brand new to the industry and, to be honest, really nervous?
Well,
Don't you think when they say you're real nervous, it's because they're so excited about it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your advice?
well, I think number one, we all started at the bottom. We and I think that there are two ways to go about it. You either can try to figure it all out by yourself, or you can educate yourself and go to take classes at community colleges or take workshops from a variety of designers. Get involved in organizations where you can actually communicate with people who are in the industry and ask questions to people who have a little bit more experience.
And also volunteer at some of
And
their events.
volunteer at the events,
Yeah.
or volunteer at flower shops, or during holiday season, or whatever. There are lots of ways to connect with people who are in the industry and who will want to share. You have to ask, not be afraid to ask. And there are also a lot of flower forums on Facebook
Yes.
that you can join and ask questions there. But I think it's really important to just educate yourself, also get some good books and read up on it and experiment. I think that's all those are important parts.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
I'll just give the same person gave a follow-up question saying one reason I'm nervous to start my career is because I'm in a fairly rural area where people either don't think about flowers or don't care. How can I get past that and show how amazing flowers can be?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah, it is a good question. I think that just making arrangements that are different from the mainstream, what you see everywhere else. So do something that's different than what they sell at the grocery store, or put different combinations of flowers together, come up with, take your yogurt container and cover them with beautiful foliage, and just present something different and at different price points, and explain to people, just tell them how important it is to have flowers. And I think that, you have to work pretty hard sometimes to get it across, but you will run into people who really will get it.
But don't you think that when you're so passionate about it and you love it so much, and you create with that love, and then you present it with that love, I mean, there's a certain energy
Right.
to excitement that rubs off on people.
Yeah.
And that has to be there. You can't be tired of it. You can't be
Right.
unexcited about it. You got to be excited about
Yeah.
it, because excitement rubs off.
Right. And I also think that if something doesn't work, then you try something else.
Yeah.
You just never ever give up.
Yeah.
I think we all have gone through times when, because of the economy or whatever situation, that we kind of had to reinvent ourselves.
No, that's
And
very
that we
true.
had, that whatever was working before, whether it was in marketing or any part, that all of a sudden it ceased to work. And so you just can't give up, and you need to figure out how to make the next step.
Yeah. But I like what Françoise said just a minute ago about being different. My thing, when I teach, is the way to make your way through the world of flowers and this whole floristry and the marketing of it is about being different today.
Yeah.
Because everybody's doing the same thing.
Yeah.
The grocery stores making bouquet, the flower shops making bouquet. They're competing with each other with the same product. So of course they're going to go for the cheaper one.
Right.
But
But-
having something different that there's no comparison.
Yeah.
And if they love that one, they have to buy that one.
Yeah.
There's no other choice. You can't shop around for
Yeah.
it because it's not there.
Yeah.
So having that distinction, and I think you've done that so well, Françoise, with your floral couture, the shoe. These are not out there, and so they're the most intriguing thing. People are just intrigued with something different today, isn't
Yeah.
it? Isn't that the case?
I think so. And what has served me well to be passionate, or to really work those different arenas, that's basically what people ask me to teach now. So very rarely am I invited to teach a workshop on wedding flowers. It's almost always on woodlands and botanical couture.
You've really created a demand for something that
No.
people are just loving. and it continues. So that goes to show you that coming up with different was a very important
Yeah.
part of the success of what you do.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to do what you really like to
Yeah.
do instead of finding it more important to do what everybody else has to do. Because, like you just said, then if there are so many that are the same, then customers probably will go for the least expensive. So
Right.
if you do something that's totally outside the box and just do it and
Yeah.
try it.
And I often get questions like from the florists, that's just sort of having a rough time with their business. And they're saying, I'm so tired of the messengers. When is it going to change to something else? Well, if that's the case, change it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, don't just follow what's going on. Just
Yeah.
change it. Come up with something new. Start the new trend,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
We have a good question that kind of ties into that. It's from Allison Ellis. She says, Hitomi and Françoise both innovate and view materials in a unique way. What advice do you have for florists who want to break out of the box a bit and try new plant material?
First of all, hi, Allison.
Hi, Allison.
Okay.
I think that we can draw inspiration from a lot of different things. Hitomi and I were talking about this morning, and she said that she was really inspired by architecture and by fashion. I think we all get inspired by different things. I get really inspired by walking in the woods, and then as you know, I kind of went about developing a whole a different little line of design for myself there. But it's about looking around and or if you see something on Facebook that you really like, kind of give it your own interpretation and go from there. It's not about copying, it's about being inspired by what other people do and then taking your own spin on it and go for it. And when I think about when I teach and all the different things that students make during a class when they basically have all the same materials to choose from and the same container, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. It's all about evolution.
Yeah.
Things need to evolve.
Yeah.
If we want to move on from what's being done that's boring, then it's our job to move
Absolutely.
it forward.
Absolutely.
And so we just have to use that creativity
Yeah.
and take it to another level.
Yeah.
And then we have something new to show all our consumers
Yeah.
that they can get excited about. It just have to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's like at one point I really was into using vegetables and fruits as containers. Today I posted on Instagram a picture of an arrangement that I made in an artichoke. So, so you figure out how to use the artichoke as a container and then you design with it, and then you get curious, I wonder what I could do with an eggplant. I wonder what I could do with a melon. I wonder what I could do with whatever.
Right.
And then you just follow that thread, and the next thing you know, you've come up with a whole bunch of new designs, or at least designs that are different from what people
No,
what
that
usually
makes
do.
total sense.
Yeah.
Because it's really all about curiosity and
It
intrigue.
is about curiosity.
Yeah.
And persistence.
You're just like a child.
we like to be
playing.
kids. Yes, we like to play. Absolutely.
Okay, we have lots of questions coming
Okay.
in, so
Good.
we'll get to the next one.
Okay.
Rondell Fleming says, how do you work out your costing using found woodland items?
Good one, Rondell.
So the thing about woodlands and doing detailed work, so you can go about defining the cost the way you do it when you do a flower arrangement, when you have the cost of each element that you can add up and multiply by whatever you want. What you really have to keep in mind with detailed work or the woodlands is number one, if you go and forage, that's time. And it's very time consuming to do more detailed work than it is to put 3 flowers in a vase, or even to make a flower arrangement in a vase. It's just way more time consuming. So you need to use define what your work is worth for the time that you spend doing it, and incorporate that into your cost.
Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a little bit expensive, but
Yeah.
that's what it needs to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Because otherwise, why would you do something special
Yeah.
and then offer it at a lower
Right,
price?
exactly.
So that's really a key, is
Yeah.
to create a formula.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Is there another question?
Yep, we have a question from Yoli Laguerre. She says,
Yoli.
"Hello, you ladies. What's the
Hi,
best
Yoli.
advice for teachers wanting to get more workshop gigs around the globe?"
Didn't we talk about that?
Yeah, we've been talking about that quite a bit.
I think it's important to offer something that not everybody else is offering. That being said, it's still not easy because there are a lot of people who are teaching. But if you can develop a niche offering workshops where you teach something completely different than what a lot of other people teach, that is helpful, I think. And then I think that you just really need to work really hard on spreading the word through social media.
So social media has become a very big, important part of getting the word out there.
Yeah.
Because I've really discovered, I'm just sort of getting into it somewhat. I've been in it for a while, but seriously. And really, it seems like if you're not present on social media, you're not there.
Right. Yeah. I always say I'd be out of business if I wasn't involved in social media, because that's how people find us.
Yeah. So how frequently, or what is your time allotment in a day to social media?
It depends on my time.
Yeah, this is true. This is true.
So when I travel, when I'm on the road to teach, I typically don't have very much time, but I always post at least once, at least one picture a day. And I just do it first thing in the morning.
Wow.
Before I do anything else.
Wow.
I make sure that I download images that, let's say that I'm going to be gone for 5 days. I don't want to have to think much about it while I'm on the road. So I download 5 or 10 images so that I can very easily post them on day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
When I'm at home and if I have more time, I definitely can spend quite a bit more time on social media. I think it's all a matter of fitting it into your day. But to me, doing social media is part of my job.
And do you actually communicate with, do you answer questions? Do you address the people that's liking all of that?
I always answer questions. I don't always, or I thank people. I don't always, or I try to like when people make comments. I don't always answer it if there is no question or whatever. But I sometimes I will private message people with answers. If the answers are more lengthy or whatever. I just think it's about, like everything else in life, about building relationships and communicating well.
It's absolutely correct.
Great. We have a question that kind of ties into that. But first, I'll just say we have a couple people giving shout outs. Greg Lum.
Oh,
and
Greg.
then
Hi,
also
Greg.
we have
Hi, Greg.
Azalea Alvarado Rodriguez saying hi there from Monterrey, Mexico. Thank you for making this.
Oh, how fantastic.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we have the Floral Den again asking a question that again ties into that. It says, what Facebook pages and books do you suggest for new designers to follow or buy?
Let's see, I'm gonna have to think a little bit. I can't think right off the bat which flower forums I follow. There's Florists of Facebook, and there's the Florists of Facebook. There's Way of Flowers, I think. There Allison Ellis's forum is focuses on the business aspect of,
Which is so very important, by the way.
which is a super great forum and very informative. You might just want to look up just Google flower forums, and maybe you can email me too, and I'll come up with a few more.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And what was the second part of the
Books.
question? Oh, the books. Books that it depends on, the type of floral design that you're looking for. or want to be inspired by. I personally was very much inspired when I started 20 years ago or so by books from Paula Pryke in England. I really like Gregor Lurch's books. And there again, email me because I have a whole list of books that I can send you or that I can post on Facebook.
That's a good idea.
For your information.
It's like, what does Françoise have on her bookshelf?
Yeah.
I think that's a good one.
Yeah.
You can even take a picture and
Yes.
then put it out there.
And put it out there. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
But there's a lot of information out there.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a couple other questions. We have Kathleen Barber for one for Francoise says, what is your favorite design? I'm not quite sure like if she means what type of design or whatnot. And then we have one for Hitomi from Rondell Fleming again, saying, have you any plans to tour Australia? Hitomi.
Well, why don't you answer about
A favorite design? No, I don't have a favorite design. I like a variety of designs, and I just really like to explore and try different things. And again, like I said earlier, how curiosity really drives.
Well, I have a question for you actually in relation to this because I know what you do, what sort of inspires you, nature mostly for a lot of your woodland and whatever, and just your sense of eye to see what you can do with combination material. But when you see other people's design, what do you look at? Do you look at the color? Do you look at the texture? What is usually the first thing that strikes you when you look at a design? Is it mechanics? Is it structure? You know, what kind of intrigues you?
I think the way it's composed and the structures. I mean, I love color, but that's not the first thing that strikes. It's just the interest of how it was made. That's usually what strikes my fancy.
I'm
And
kind of very
inspires
much
me.
that way as well because you know at this point it's like you're just curious about different
Yeah.
techniques, mechanics, construction,
Right.
what supports what and
Right.
how, and
Yeah.
all of that. So.
Yeah.
As far as question from Rondell about Australia, not any plans at the moment. I think the last time I visited Australia was I did something in Perth. And so I got to see that side of Australia. Perhaps I'd like to see the other side.
Yeah.
But no plans at the moment. Okay.
Okay, I think we'll take one more question and then we're going to have to start wrapping things up. We have a question from Tracy Park from Park Place Design. How do us as seasoned designers educate the new and upcoming about not undercutting, that skilled mechanics are a must and wrapping a ribbon on some pretty flowers is not art?
Well, it's something that I do talk about in the workshops. I actually often ask people what their markup is, and if somebody, I remember very distinctively somebody telling me one time that her markup was twice, you know, the cost of flowers. And I just really explained to her, you know, when you think of all the work that's involved and just added all the things up, etc., there is just no way that you can make a living doing that kind of markup. And that it really is not the right thing to do when you undercut other people in the industry. I was very polite about it, but I was pretty straightforward about it also.
I think that's one of the things that really hurts the industry is when somebody's trying to be so competitive by undercutting to get the business, but it hurts everyone.
Yeah,
It
does.
hurts sort of the standard of our profession. It hurts the skill level of the profession because it's really not just about selling flowers. It's
Right.
about what are we worth.
Yeah,
And so I think that's a real biggie.
and the knowledge that we have acquired.
And we need to make
Yeah.
sure that we pass on that information to any new people
Yeah.
that come in. That one of the biggest thing is undercutting. It doesn't get you more business.
No.
It just hurts you,
Yeah.
and you'll end up not making money, and
Right.
you will end up not doing it.
Yeah.
And we can't afford to hurt the whole
Yeah.
industry with that.
Right.
So what was the other question? Was there another question,
No, I
or
think
it was
that's what it
about
was.
that?
Yeah.
Oh, and about the art of flowers, like wrapping ribbon. You know, like what kind of skill level would we like to see in the profession, so that, you know, it's not just simply this that you have to do to make this business what it is. You know, the artistry of flowers is an interesting thing, because anytime you really apply the artistic element and you put that little extra in, it's special enough that you have to charge for it. And if the business is about that, and it should be, then it's great. But the fact is, you know, it's still the competitive, like, and it's also the how long it takes to do something. I mean, it's still a business of speed and production. And so there's really two kind of floristry, don't you think there
I
is?
totally agree.
And I think there's room for everyone. There's room for those who just slap it together and put a little ribbon and then they sell it for this much. But that's not worth that much.
Right.
You know, it's that entry level floristry. But there's the artistry of flowers. But the thing is, you have to respect what it takes to do it, the time, and charge for it. It's really high-end floristry. We need more high-end floristry. Don't you think?
Absolutely. And I think that both, it's a different clientele for, you know,
Absolutely.
for both ways of doing it.
Yeah. But the skill level that you develop as a professional floral artist equals bigger paycheck.
Right. Absolutely.
Because you can't be doing this
Right.
for nothing, and you
Right.
can't be giving it away. That hurts us so much
Yeah.
when we do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much more to talk about.
Yeah.
And we'll have to do this again sometimes, but we had just such a great time
Yes.
spending a couple days together and just chatting up and, you know, talking about what can we do
Right.
as
We talked
teachers.
a lot about
yes,
flowers.
we really have talked a lot about flowers. And, you know, we found a lot of similarities. We're
Yeah.
so much alike in so many different ways. And it's all about sharing ideas and sharing techniques, sharing with teaching. And we so both believe in the new generation of florists that's out there. The passion is strong.
Yeah.
And we think it's going to be a wonderful world of floristry, growing these people.
Yeah.
So thank you, Françoise, for joining
Thank
me
you for
today.
having me.
And we just have had so much fun.
Yes.
So we'll see you again another time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.